All righty. Week 14, yay! We've made it to week 14. All right, yeah, this is the last and final installment of the Central Oregon Recording Experience course for the adults. So mastering today, which should be a lot of fun. So of course we have worked through the song. We've done what we can with it, from start to finish. We started talking over all the equipment, going through the recording process of, recording a singer-songwriter, and then going through adding guitars and drums and bass and electric instruments, et cetera, all the way through to now going into the mixing, cleaning up using EQ, compression, the basics of all of that into time-based effects, and now we're here, the final thing that we have to do. So let's just kind of dig in and take a look at what we've got going on here. So here is our mix that we had from last time. Kind of look over this here. So you can see we've got, I just pulled these up to see we can just kind of quickly look over any EQ settings that we might have done. And then of course we've got our compression, all of our sends here to our effects that are over here. So this is kind of what everything looks like. All of our levels are set. Alrighty, so with mastering, the idea behind a mastering engineer back in the day was to help usually set album order because they were fitting things onto vinyl records, so you only had so much space to cut those on. And most mastering engineers were also lathe engineers, so they knew how to work a lathe because back then they didn't have computers to run lathes, so they had to do that by hand. Today, mastering engineers focus a lot on the process of getting levels right depending on where they're going, also the sweetening up, so using EQ and a lot of different kinds of higher end processing to make a sound, make the mix sound wider, make it sound more, have more depth to it, things like that. Some of them might still work in the idea that like helping with album order and stuff like that, but that's usually between like maybe the artist and the producer. But again, mastering engineer might be involved with that as well. Mastering is a whole nother setup that we kind of get into, that we work with. It's not your typical, let's just throw on some EQ and make adjustments. There's really minute changes, and also working with the entire stereo spectrum. A lot of the tools in a mastering, like a mastering engineer's DAW or physical, like actual hardware, are very specialized and very expensive. So it's a very specific thing. So before we dive in, the only other thing that we didn't touch on that I will briefly touch on is automation. The idea behind automation is we can write in changes to volume, to panning, to plugins turning on and off, or even adjusting parameters of plugins during a set or a certain time. On most larger consoles, you were able to do this. They had like some kind of computer that were built in or off to the side that ran the automation, so motorized faders that you could then program to move at certain points. And even some engineers still do this live, where they'll start with a song. Michael Brower is one specifically. Say they will start with a song and they'll work on section by section, and like they'll sit and they'll wait for the drums, and maybe have like the drums have a tom solo or something they want to come out, and they'll bring the toms up and they'll bring them back down, and then they'll go to the next part. And they're like, oh, like this guitar part needs to stick out, and boom, boom, and they'll do that back and forth a bunch. And they'll go section by section to kind of build motion and movement into the song. Not all songs need to be static. This one's not bad. Most of the players played with dynamics and kind of played within their element, being a live group. So they would back off when certain solos needed to be played, or get louder for certain parts, things like that. So there wasn't a lot I needed to do. However, I did leave some for us to look at. So with automation, we can go here and look at our mix, and I'm going to pull up specifically our pedal steel here. So let's take a look at these. Let me zoom these out a little bit. Okay, so if we look at this as it is, we can see the parts here where he's just playing along, and then these little bit fatter areas where he was most likely soloing. So let's take a listen in one of these areas real quick. Okay, so that area right there happened to be a solo, so we can kind of tell where the solos are. Now, I have already gone through and done a little bit of automation here, but I want to take you through what we can do. This is just some quick things for Pro Tools specifically, but any DAW will have this ability. But right here for Pro Tools, we typically have this little drop-down bar that this is what's actually showing. So we can see blocks, playlists, analysis and warp, waveform, volume, mute, pan, and then any sends, level, and mute. So there's a lot of stuff we can control. This is our automation menu. As you can see, the volume already has a little bit of yellow right here, which is telling me that I have already done something to it. So let's open this up and we'll take a look. All right, and let me just make sure one thing real quick. Okay, good. So if I zoom in here and we take a look, we have this line right here. So this line represents what we chose, which is our volume. So this line goes along, you see right here. Right here, we've got a little dip that I wrote in and then a little boost. So let's just look at that real quick and see what that is.
Now the boss was a senator and made headlines. When the sheriff called the feds and hung him out to dry.
Okay, so that was his little pluck and then his little slide that he did. Now, I'll play the part again. Let's switch to the other view. Here's our pedal steel right here. I want you to watch the faders when I hit play again. Because remember, we wrote automation in, so let's see what happens.
Now the boss was a senator and made headlines. When the sheriff called the feds and hung him out to dry.
So there, you see the faders were moving. I wasn't touching them. My cursor was there, but I wasn't touching anything. So we can write in things that we want to change and leave them there to do that. If we go back here, we'll take a look again. Down here, you can see I boosted this little part here. Let's see what that is.
Died, he got shot at the gate. Prison guard said he was trying.
So like that, little tiny things that you can make poke out that are interesting in a mix, whether it's on the drums, on guitars, on keyboards, even on bass, on maybe background vocals or the regular vocals. We can write these in to kind of give us, like our ear candy, things that are going to poke out and kind of entice the listener to be like, hey, like pay attention to this real quick and then duck it back down. Or maybe vice versa, if it's something we need to pull down, we want to pull that down. Of course, you can do this with panning, making things move back and forth. So I'll show you how I write this in. With us, we do have actual faders, so we can do this by touching a fader and moving it manually. But before that, we all work with mice or a trackpad or something along those lines. So I have a marker here, just kind of marking where this other solo part is. Unable to erase. So to erase, let's write this in first and then we'll erase it. So at this marker, so here's the solo. So let's play this real quick. So it is a little buried for being a solo, so we need to boost it. So what I typically do, we can either put marks in by, on a Mac, it's Command. I don't know what it is on a Windows, but we can basically just hold the Command button and you'll see the little plus symbol show up on the hand, and then we can literally put marks, little dots, wherever we want on these, and then we can move these up or down. In order to undo this, we'll just Command Z, these back and out. Oh, let me one sec here. Got a new little tool. Okay. How much memory does automation take? It depends on how much you're writing in. It can be demanding. It depends on your computer and how much motion and movement you're doing. So again, to write this, like a quick and easy way, what I'll do is I'll just grab the part that I want boosted. I'll highlight it just by, click and dragging. And so here's the whole thing. And then when you move your cursor up, you get like the little bar. It looks like it's trying to grab. So now if I click and pull this up, I'm changing the volume. So you can see that I've written this in right here. So now if we listen to it again, so there, it's a little bit louder, it sticks out a little bit more because it's a solo and we want it to do that. If we needed to get rid of this, if we didn't like it, or say we wanted to redo it, we could always write over this. We could make a change to it. We could grab it and move it around. Or if you have faders, you could go into a write mode and do this. Or we can actually just grab this here. Oop, let me grab the whole thing here and right click, and we can use the clear right here. That's it, gone. So let me put it back in there. The other way to do that, grab it, hit delete. Now it won't affect the audio track because again, we're looking at our volume right here. We're not looking at the waveform. If I were to do that on the waveform, it would of course delete the waveform, but because we're looking at the volume automation, that's how you delete that. Quick and easy way is the other option. If you want to disable it completely, again, this is kind of where all your automation's happening. Right here we have this. So we have off, read, touch, latch, and write. These are all automation modes. You can read up on these to get more in depth with automation. I'm not going to dive into it too much because we have a lot to talk about on the mastering side. But basically what these mean, reads the automation that you've written, and then you've got touch, latch, and write, which are your 3 different modes to write automation in. Make a transition, let's improve. You can make transitions, like more smooth. For example, like if I, real quick, let's put this into write mode for fun. Actually here, let's do this. I'll undo it, and you guys won't be able to see this, but I'm gonna do it with the faders, but watch the screen as we write this in. So here we go. So there, I did that with faders, moving up and down. You can also, I think you can write with your mouse too. I haven't done it in a long time. But you can see it's very different than just like grabbing a chunk and pulling it up. The other option, of course, if we go, let's see, let me go back here. Let's grab this. We'll boost it up a little bit, say to there-ish. It's actually a little bit more. But the other option, of course, is to draw this in. So you can see there's 2 dots here, hopefully. Actually, let's see, I cannot, okay. And again, writing with faders, it doesn't have to be like what we have where they're motorized. You can use like some keyboards and stuff like that have the little faders on them, or sometimes you can even do it with encoders, like little knobs. If you have like a small control surface or a keyboard that has all this stuff, you can program this in. It just takes a little bit of reading up on how to program specifically to do it, but it can be done. But to manually do this, like if we wanted this to gradually slope in, I could come back here and say we'll drop a little dot right there. So we've got this dot here, which is basically where our automation change is going to happen. The next dot up here is where automation goes. So if we add another dot back here, and we wanted basically a slope from this dot up to our new change, we can get rid of this. Basically, with Mac, it's the Option or Alt. I don't remember what it is on Windows. It might still be Alt, but we can hold that. You see the minus sign comes up. Tap it, it goes away, and now all of a sudden we have this nice slope right here. So there's that option too if you don't want it to be as gradual. And again, because this is basically where we're coming from and where we're going to. It's kind of, let's see, Mike, you might be more familiar with this, like with keyframing in video. It's kind of the same idea where you're putting like a point to a point and you want a keyframe to change between those points. It's the same idea, it's just we're doing it in the audio world. So, this is like automation, like doing point-to-point writing, and we're programming that in of like, okay, between this point and this point, you're gonna change this much. So same thing. Again, like when we write it in and just pull it up, it's just doing an instant quick change. So let me get rid of that dot. Okay, let's see. That might have been too much, so let's listen to it real quick. It's actually pretty good. I like it. So again, that's if we're in the read mode, we're reading. If we change this to off, now automation won't be read. You see the blue line? Now, because our automation is off, that's where it's going to stay, is this little blue line right here. It's not going to do what we wrote in. So this is another way to get rid of automation if you don't want it. So again, it just depends. Now, of course, we want the automation, so I'm going to leave it on read. And a little far, but you can see back here, I also boosted another solo back here where I wanted it. So I'm going to leave this where it is. And that's pretty much it. That's just quick and down dirty automation. Again, if you want to play with this more, you can go read about it in your specific DAW as well. There should be, like in the manual or under help, you can figure out exactly how to do the automation specifically for your DAW. All right, so I'm gonna put this back in a waveform for now. Let's shrink this up. Okay, so we have everything sounding the way we want, which is great. So how do we get from what we have here, which we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, plus all of our effects. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7. So we're up to 28 tracks. How do we get all of this down to a left and a right that would then go to either a mastering house or for us to master ourselves? So the quick and easy way to do this would be to bounce this out, or we can always create another track and record this to the track. I'm going to do a quick and dirty bounce just so we can kind of move along. So let's do this. I'm going to bounce out of our main out, our wave file here. So let's kind of go over some of these real quick. We have wave, AIFF, and MP3. Wave file is what we mostly hear on CDs, things like that. It's a lossless codec, so it has a lot of information and is a pretty big size. AIFF, I think, is specific for Apple or Apple products, but other DAWs can read AIFFs. This one, I'd say stay away from unless the client or you can use this, because again, some DAWs and things can't use this. And MP3 is a codec that you will lose a lot of information on. It has an algorithm that takes away things that it thinks we don't need to hear. So I'm going to leave it on wave. Our format, we have mono summed, multiple mono, or interleaved. Interleaved basically means like a stereo track, left and right. Multiple mono will be one on the left, one on the right. And then mono would be just a single track together. Let's see, 2 questions for you. Let's have one. How many hours you put in this recording total, and do we have access to each of the online lessons for future reference? So Miguel, how many hours do we put in? This one, it's a little hard to say because we were doing it for the class. So probably in actual time that we spent working on it with recording and setup, so an hour-ish to set up. Again, remember, we had to retrack everything, but I mean, I set everything up. It took us about an hour, took about 2 hours to track everything, so there's 3 hours. Mixing side, again, we went through it together, but it would probably take me 2 hours or 3 hours to get through this. And then mastering it probably take me an hour or two, depending. So what is that, like 8 hours total that I've spent on this, I think, if I were to combine everything together. Granted, we spread everything out, so there's a lot more time that was involved explaining and going through all of this stuff. And yes, you have access to all of this stuff. As a part of the class, you will have access to the Google Drive from here on out. So as we continue to do courses and we update and put in new recordings, we bring in new bands, you will have access to more and more and more. It will always grow and grow. And then all of these YouTube videos will stay up. Just make sure to save the links. So all the emails I sent you, if you want, you can grab the link off of each one and put them maybe like in a folder or a file somewhere so you have them, because you'll have access to all of these live videos as well. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, because we'll be releasing even more content about all of this stuff as we go along. So if you guys want to follow along with that kind of stuff. So for us, we need an interleaved file, stereo file, because that's what we need to work with, a left and a right. Now, bit depth and sample rate. Bit depth is basically the headroom within our computer or within our DAW. When all this came out, it was 16-bit. So 16-bit has a real low headroom. So we had the chance of clipping things, which is why when digital audio first came out, digital audio workstations, a lot of people didn't adopt it right away because it was actually even harder for them to work in than tape was for distortion and like peaking out and stuff. When they went to 24-bit, they increased the size, like our headroom, massively. What this means, you cannot clip a signal inside your DAW. No matter how much gain you add to a signal inside, like to an internal busing that's a software process, you're not going to clip it. Granted, plugins, yes, you can clip plugins if they're emulated on analog circuitry. But if it's a digital plugin, I almost guarantee you will not be able to clip it. We're talking over 400 or 500 dB of headroom. You'll never get there. And again, 32-bit float, same thing. It's, we're talking thousands of dB of headroom that you'll never reach. The reason that we typically do 24 is like it's a lot more space, a lot more information there that we can work with. Our sample rate, again, now these were things that we set in the very beginning, but the sample rate's how many pictures that we're taking of the audio per second. So 48 kilohertz, we're taking 48,000 pictures in a second of the audio as it goes through. As you can see, we've got 88.2, 96, 176.4, and 192. These just happen to be what we can do with our interface that we have. Some interfaces can go even further. That all comes down to how fast and good your computer is and how good your interface is to how far you can go. Again, this is just how many pictures you're taking per second. So it's that fine line. Analog, analog is analog. It's basically seamless compared to the digital that we have. Digital, we have to capture pictures of it and we have to estimate the space in between 2 points. So again, we typically do 48 as it works. It sounds fine. I mean, eventually we'll go to 96 when we get there. We're just not there yet. Most, like iTunes and things like that, most labels are now asking for 96 kilohertz files. because they're trying to future-proof themselves in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Eventually, we will get to being able to have 96 kilohertz audio files streamed from our 5 or 6 or 10G, whatever we end up getting to, because it'll be so fast we can stream those super high quality, super big audio files. So, but for now, 44.1, 48 is typically where you're wanting to stay. 44.1 is CD quality. Not saying that CD quality is the best, but it was good enough for all these years. It's still pretty good. So we just go one step up. All right, I'm going to bounce this, and then of course we can choose a file name. I'm just gonna call this, we'll call this Little Dixie Bounce. And I'm going to choose my directory here. I'm just going to bounce this real quick to the desktop so we can find it. And then with Pro Tools and some other DAWs, you have the ability to bounce in real time, where we would sit and listen to this song in real time as it goes through, or we can bounce it, like this one calls it offline. We can use the computer's processing power to bounce it as quickly as possible. That's what we're going to do. So let's just go through that real quick. It's going to bounce, and once it's done, we'll move on. Here we go. Okay. So that was the full bounce. So again, we didn't hear anything during that time because the computer was just processing as fast as it could with what we had going on. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to grab all of our effects and everything else that we did, and we're going to get rid of these. So what I'm going to do, and this is just for us here so we can get through this quickly. So I'm going to select this, hide and make inactive. They're all going to disappear, and they're going to be inactive. It's going to disable all the plugins, all the audio files, everything's going to disappear. So here we go. Okay, nothing left. Now, we need to get our new audio file in. So Command-Shift-I for import, and I'm going to go to our desktop, Little Dixie Bounce. I'm going to add it. Done. Yep. Bam. There it is. Okay, so here is our track. This is what it looks like right here. So here's the whole thing. Let's get this routed properly. Going to there. Okay. So that is now going to the sub master here, and then we see here to the master. So let's make sure it's playing. Here it is.
They found John and Lee on a logging road.
So there it is. There's the whole mix. So you can see there's some pretty big peaks here, probably snare drums. Let's see. Yep, stuff like that. So we're going to kind of tame some of that here a little bit. All right, so Miguel, yeah, I still need to, we need to figure out a time. Since this is the last class, I'll have a little bit more time. We'll figure out a time to get together because I want to look over your rig and see what's going on, because something's being funky on your Pro Tools rig. So we'll get together in the next few weeks and figure that out. Okay. So again, mastering. we need to sweeten up our sound. We need to get it leveled properly for whatever service we're going to, whether we're going to CD, whether we're going to a streaming service, whether we're going to vinyl, all of these things. They all have different requirements. So a mastering engineer's job is to make sure it goes to specific levels and stuff, or specific EQs for certain places. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to take you guys to a different screen. From here on, I probably will use some third-party plugins because, again, mastering is very specific. Avid does give you some stuff that you can use. It's not 100% the greatest, but it's good. But there's a lot of better stuff out there. But for a visualization's sake, we're going to use some fun toys. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a session analyzer. So the session analyzer is going to show us the complete 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz like wave, like what we're actually seeing in all the different frequency spectrum. We're going to see that. We're going to have, let's see here, we're going to have what's it called? One sec here. Spectral something. I don't remember what it's called. We have a vector scope, which shows, vector scope is going to show like our width, so mono to sides, and then we have another one that's going to show us our panning back and forth in the stereo, or in the in our full like audio spectrum of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So basically, there'll be one bar that's going to show us where, like, you know, if it's like 2K, where it's bouncing back and forth. We'll have another one that's just showing what, like, the amplitude of certain frequencies, or like what's the loudest, and then we'll have one thing that's showing us our mono compared to stereo information just as a big blob. So let's look at that real quick here. All right, so hopefully it pops up. And so again, let me scroll down here so we can take a look at it. So again, so we've got this one here. This, again, it's going to show us our left side and our right side in our full frequency spectrum. Hopefully, maybe. Aha, I didn't have it selected. Let's try this again. So I just want to make sure this populates so that we can all see it together here. The great thing about streaming, I gotta wait for the lag so I can make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing here. Still nothing. All right, well, that's just weird. All right, well, screw it. We're going to do something else then. I'm going to bring it in here. All right, this should work. Hopefully, maybe. Hey, look at that. Okay, so hopefully we can see this. All right, so here is our spatial spectrogram is what it's called. So again, this is going to show us our frequency range. So we have 20 hertz all the way down there, up to 20 kilohertz to the top. We've got our left, we've got our center, and then we've got our right. Then here, we've got how loud it is, our amplitude, and then we've got 20 hertz all the way to 20 kilohertz over here. And then this is our vector scope, which is going to show us our mono information and then how wide it is, and then if we're in phase or not. And then we've got some metering. So let's see real quick, let's see if I can do this, what happens. I'm going to hit play on Pro Tools, and then we're going to take a look at this. So let me find a good spot in the song. Let's come back here. Right before the electric guitar start, I'm going to hit play, and then we'll jump back.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, story Sheridan told. Said it was around a double-out buck. Everybody knew paint shop burned down to the ground. It was 35 miles just south of MacTown. He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how did she...
Okay, so again, we're seeing, we were seeing the frequency spectrum all around. It was showing us our peaks here. We were watching down here our mono or how stereo it was, and then we were watching the frequencies bounce from left to right, which shows us where where the frequencies are in the whole spectrum. I like using audio tools like this, visual tools for audio, because this is kind of confirming what our ears are hearing. We're making sure that our ears are true by what we're actually seeing as well. And it also helps train you, to train your ears so that way you have a visualization to be like, oh, that's what's going on. So the idea here across this one here, I guess our magnitude spectrum, is that we might want to stay somewhat level, but it depends on the style of music. If it's EDM, most likely we're going to have a lot of low end and a lot of high end, so like a lot of boom and a lot of fizz. So we might have more of a smiley-faced look to that whole graph. If we're doing like this, we're doing a country song, so it might be a little bit flatter is kind of what we're shooting for if we're doing certain things, because we're going to have to kind of work with it. It doesn't always matter what it looks like, it matters what it sounds like, but it is nice to have a visual of this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys a visual of what everything looked like here. So the biggest thing to start with here is kind of the sweetening of everything. When EQing on something like this, I typically don't go super crazy with EQ. I'll do small moves. So let's grab real quick. I'm going to grab a plugin here. Okay, this is the Infinity EQ. This is from Slate Digital. This comes in their Slate Digital pack, which at this moment in time, I think is still $14.99 per month for everything that they have. Something similar to this would be the Fab Filter, their Pro Q or Pro EQ or Pro Q2 or whatever they call it. Now the reason I want to do this is it does give us a visualization, but it also has what we call mid-side processing. The idea behind mid-side processing, it allows us to process information in the middle of the mix, so things that are monoed or coming out of both speakers at the same time, different than our sides or our stereo stuff, so anything that's panned out. So again, like our guitars, our steel, our drum overheads, things like that were panned out from the center. So we can affect that plus reverbs and delays differently than we can our center information. Now real quick, I'm gonna hit play again. I'm gonna jump back to the visualizer and we're gonna look at something very specific. On the one on the left, down below, we're gonna look at the low end real quick. And we're gonna watch it because it's jumping back and forth between our left and right. So here, I'll show you what we're talking about.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, story Sheridan told. Said it was around a double-out buck.
Okay, again, it's jumping around, which tells me that our low end, even though we went through and we did low end cuts, there's still extra low end somewhere that's bouncing around, probably in the drums somewhere. But we're gonna fix that using mid-side. Now this is more like an advanced EQing process, but this is what mastering engineers do. They do this on a daily basis. This is how they can make mixes sound the way they sound. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add in a cut right here. I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. With this plugin, we have the ability, to make this sharper or anything like that. I'll probably put it around, that works, around 14. And then right here, in our mode, we can have it in stereo, which is left or right, so we can affect just the left side, we can affect just the right side, or we can put this into mid-side. So now we can affect just the middle information or just the side information. So the thing we're after is affecting the sides. We want to get any low end out of the sides because low end is best when it's centered. It's our kick and our bass. We want it to live in the center, especially if this is ever going to any kind of vinyl. A vinyl mastering engineer will take all the bass out of the sides, bring everything into the center, and then they'll usually cut it a bunch because of how vinyl works. We can't have a lot of low end going to vinyl. It won't cut right. The needle will skip out, and then you have a really bad vinyl record. It's very specific for vinyl, but with EDM, things like that, typically we can have bass on the sides, but they would never put it on a vinyl. They would most likely put it to CD or to digital. So I'm gonna pull this up, and we're gonna get rid of the low end on the sides. We'll start around maybe here.
Right, we froze mid-side.
They found John and Lee on a logging road.
Okay, I was soloing up there. It was probably hard to hear unless you're on some decent headphones or some monitors. There's just a little bit of low end in there. We're soloing just the stuff we were cutting out of the sides. And I could barely hear a little bit of like kick and maybe some of the drum rooms or something. So we didn't quite get it all when we were cutting. So what this is helping us do is center our low end information, bringing it in and really focusing it so it's actually more punchier, it's tighter sounding, it's really gonna help overall make the mix sound thick and then wide when we get there. So I'm just working on the side right now, so I'll probably pull this up a little bit more, probably right there. Let's see what that does. I'm gonna solo it, so when you see it flip, it's soloed, so we're hearing what we're cutting away.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. Down a double-out buck, everybody knew. How Jimmy Wayne's shop burned down to the ground.
Okay, I'll do this again. I'll take it in and out. I want you to listen to how the bass and the kick all of a sudden seem that they come in and they just focus. It's like it sounds fine as it is, but when we do this, all of a sudden that kick and the bass just feel like they have a little bit more clarity and presence and just authority in the center. So I'll take it in and I'll take it out. And I just hit the bypass button. So here we go.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident story sheriff told. Said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew Johnny didn't hunt. How Jimmy Wayne's shop burned down to the ground.
So again, we're just cleaning up the sides a little bit. So now with this in, let's jump back to our session analyzer and take a look. Here we go.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident story sheriff told. Said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew.
That's what we want to see. We want to see that low end just sitting nice and straight. Now again, without these tools, it can be a little difficult to do, which is why with mastering, we typically send out to a mastering house. Now there are plugins out there, like Isotope is a great example. They're Ozone 8. They give you really good tools and kind of give you presets to get you started. They use computer-based algorithms to scan the song and kind of give you a starting point. You're still going to need to use your ears in order to adjust things like that. So for example, if I just get rid of this, and let's see, I think we have something of theirs. I don't remember exactly what we have. Where are you? Isotope Incorporated. Let's grab ozone 9 elements right here. So you might want to check on this. In fact, I suggest that you check on this after this is over. I believe Sweetwater is still giving, or Sweetwater and Isotope are still giving this away for free. So I definitely suggest if you have a DAW to go sign up and go get this. It's a great tool to start with, and then as you learn this, you might end up buying the full thing, but a really, really good deal. So just a heads up, they're giving this away for free, I think until the end of the month, so you have just a few days left. But if you can and you want to, go look it up. You can type in like maybe Sweetwater Ozone Elements 9 free or something like that into Google. Hopefully it pops up and you can snag this because it is totally worth it. With this guy here, there's usually, let's see here, I'm trying to remember, I haven't actually used this 100%, right here, Master Assistant. So let's see what this does here. I'm gonna turn this on. So like this, it's asking questions like, what are you going for? Intensity, low, medium, high. We'll keep it at medium. Destination, are we streaming this or are we going to go to CD? We're gonna stream this. So it says, for the best results, play the loudest portion of your track. So we'll hit next. And real quick, let's go find like probably the end here. So I'm gonna play a little bit of the end and let's see what happens. Here we go. Okay, so there, it just analyzed everything for us and gave us a great starting point. These are great tools if you're starting out. Again, go. Either you can even open up another tab, I don't care. Just go see if you can find this. It is free. It's a great starting point, but let's see what it did. Equalizer. It actually boosted some low end and it boosted some top end. That's all it did. Cool. Boosted some 43. So it said, hey, you need some more low end and hey, you need some more highs. Not bad. Let's see. Did it do anything with the imager? Didn't touch the imager. Maximizer, which we'll get into this. So it set our ceiling for -1, which we'll get to about streaming. There's a reason we set it for that. And then it brought the threshold down to -8.7 with a fast release, it looks like. Cool. Yeah. Sounded great, right? All right, so let's see if we can get something that's close to that just by doing it ourselves. Now again, this is done by an algorithm, so it's not always the right way. Most mastering engineers can do stuff like this and make it sound way better. Yes, Miguel, mastering for streaming or for CD or for vinyl, they are all different. They are different locations. They need to be set for different things. And we'll talk about that, and I'll give you a great tool that is also free to help with this. All right, Mike says 3 days left on that ozone thing. So yeah, if you can, go get it. It's free. It's totally worth it. They even have an upgrade for like $29, I think, to get even more pieces of the whole package. Totally worth it. They sent an email out like a week or two ago. I got it. And I snagged everything because it was so worth it. Okay, so EQ, again, we pulled out some low end there. Honestly though, like the mix sounds pretty good. I would probably add some top end as well. So let's just go in here and make a shelf. And let's see what happens here. Now this is gonna be for the entirety of the whole thing, right? So mid and side, all of it. We're gonna make the whole thing a little bit brighter. So again, we're adding just tiny amounts, like 1.15 dB. So 1 dB, not a lot. Just enough to add a little bit of presence and air to it. So let's see here. Let's keep going.
You call a little Dixie Mafia here. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross and we'll give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia here.
Okay, I'm gonna add a shelf boost, but again, we're only gonna do it to the middle now on this one, because we only wanna boost it in the low end in the middle of the mix.
You call a little Dixie Mafia here. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross and we'll give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia here. There was a little Dixie Mafia here. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross and we'll give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia here.
Okay. All right, so let's kind of leave that again. We boost around 60. Now let me go back and see what Ozone recommended. They recommended on their equalizer right here around 40. See, 1 dB, 1. Their top end around 12K, about half a dB. Granted, our shelves are a little bit different. I went here, which, let's see, we're at, where are we at here? That's 60, probably bring it down, yeah, 65, about 1 dB, and up here, again, 1 dB-ish, around 10K, 99.5. So basically, similar thing. I'm hearing the same thing, basically. All right, the other thing it did is it made things louder. So let's look at loudness stuff. Now with this, there's a lot of extra stuff you can do on the mastering side, saturation, things to spread things out. But let's look at some real quick tools. The biggest tool that you'll always end up using is a limiter. A limiter is a compressor that has such a high ratio that it basically cuts things off completely. Now there are different types of limiters. We've, like a brick wall limiter, but you've got the ability here to do different things. So let's pull up, for example, the one that comes stock and just take a look at it. So it's called Maxim. Maxim is the stock limiter that comes in Pro Tools. So let's go over some parameters here. Threshold, so of course, the threshold is where we're setting it. So like the more we bring this down, the more it's going to turn things up. So it actually says here, the threshold control determines the level above which input peaks will be limited. Limited peaks are attenuated to match the threshold level. So basically what it's saying is anything that goes above the threshold will only go as loud as we set our ceiling. Our ceiling is the top, right? The peak that we have. So this is where we would set this on how loud we want it coming out. So we could set it super low, we could set it at 0. -1 is what is recommended by all streaming services. If you are going to Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, you name it, Pandora, SoundCloud, all of them, I definitely suggest that you go to -1. -1 is always the best thing that you can do here. The reason why they say that, if your limiter is not what they call a true peak limiter or an intersample limiter, where it's not catching the peaks in between, they can jump over. Or if your limiter is not a hard brick wall and is more of like a saturator, which I'll show you in a second, then you might have peaks that are coming through without you actually seeing it or knowing about it. So by giving yourself a little bit of extra room when you send it to a streaming service, it won't hurt or basically clip their encoder, and then you won't get distortion. So it's always best to set the ceiling at -1. Don't go to 0, just in case of these things. Release, of course, how fast the release is, how fast it comes back. Dither, Dither is important when bouncing out, going anywhere. Dither is basically a noise floor that goes in behind the music. So when you're scaling down and it's encoding, it's not losing out on information. So there is a really good video out about this. I'll see if I can find it. Basically, the greatest way to show this is like with a reverb tail. Without dither, reverb tails can distort. So instead of being like it'll be like, it'll crumble away. It'll sound all distorted and garbled and go away. Dither adds a noise in the background that gives basically a noise or the algorithm, the encoder, sound to continue like a reverb tail and things like that. So dither is used when you're bouncing out, going to another platform, going out to streaming, going out to stuff like that. Don't use dither if you're going to a mastering engineer or a mastering house. They will do the dither themselves. They typically have a way better dither than you will have. Noise shaping adjusts the way the dither sounds, so it goes from like a hiss to more like a shush. It just usually sounds better, and then we've got different types of dither here. So this, of course, has some factory presets. We've got CD mastering. So CD mastering is showing a release of 250 milliseconds, ceiling of -0.1, and then a threshold of 3. We have the mixing limiter. So this, say you could use this to throw on your mix before it kind of goes, like if you're going out to a client, just to have them listen to it or check it, or to give you an idea of roughly what it would sound like after mastering. This is kind of like that kind of a setting. Pop radio, you can see how much this gets crushed. -15 on the threshold with a -0.1 ceiling with a massive release time. So it's literally just crushing and holding on to it and not letting go. And then radio limiter. Not as bad as the pop, but still decent amount. All right, so I'm going to take this up to 0. And I'm going to link these real quick. Now, the reason I'm linking these is as I bring the threshold down, it's going to get louder. The signal will get louder. But I'm going to use this real quick to kind of show as I bring the threshold down so you can hear the compression, but hopefully things won't get as loud. Let's see what happens here. So you can hear all that compression just pulling down and holding on and just kind of destroying our mix. So that's not what we want. We want this to be nice and smooth and to basically just make things louder and capture any of the peaks that we have to just level things out. So let me reset this. So let's see what this does now as I, actually, hold on, let me change this to a pop radio setting. And then we'll come down to here. We'll make this -1 real quick. Okay, so again, this is gonna get a little bit louder, but here we go. So again, as I continue to bring that threshold down, it's bringing up everything else. It's automatically turning up the gain. Now this is specific for like this limiter, but limiters work in this basic fashion. As you bring your threshold down, it's going to continue to increase the gain on the other side to kind of keep it leveled out, because we're trying to capture the peaks basically. So keeping the peaks controlled, but turning up everything else. So again, you can kind of see like that our yellow bars, if we watch the master level here, they're going to be way up here, and then we're going to be bouncing around this 0 mark right here, and I'll bypass it and you'll watch the level drop, and of course you'll hear it drop. Here we go. So again, we're listening and we're watching this get louder. Now, of course, this is what we want. We want it to be loud, but we don't want it to be too loud where we squash the crap out of it because it won't sound good. And the reason for this is streaming services have their own algorithms that they use to level out things called LUFS. So loudness units is what we now measure things in. So in order to show that, let me pull up a quick thing here. Here we go, the M Loudness Analyzer. All right, this is a free plugin. This is another free one out there. This is from a company called Melda. Melda makes a ton of free plugins. All they ask is that, that you activate it and you pay them some money because their stuff is cool. And they put it out there, use it, try it, pay them when you can. But this is a great thing to grab, again, called Melda. So this is their M Loudness Analyzer. And we've got some different settings up here, and we've got a ton of presets, or some presets in here. So you see we've got default, YouTube, iTunes, music recommended, Spotify, iTunes official. So let's go by music recommended. Let's just see what that does. So we're gonna load the music recommended and hit close. Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff here that we can look at. So we've got our peak levels, our true peak, so this is actually watching in between samples, our momentary, which, let's see if it, I don't remember if it explains it or not on these. I don't think it does. But basically momentary is within a short amount of time. And we've got our short term, which is a little bit longer time, and integrated. Now these are all going to be measuring LUFS. So you can see our target LUFS is -16 LUFS, which means the 0 point here is -16 LUFS. LUFS is similar to RMS, which is the average level, but it's how we perceive volume, how we perceive loudness. This is what the LUFS levels are based off of. So this tells us how loud something is. So it's not always about, are the drums hitting hard or the guitars, cranked up in the mix or whatever. It's a blend of everything. We need to listen to the whole program material, all of it. And we typically do it over time. This is what all of these streaming services use to monitor and to watch, or basically to look at the music and say, do we need to turn it up or down for our streaming platform? So the integrated is the one that we care about the most. Our crest factor is the difference between our loudest peak and our average level. And then range and PLR, we don't really worry about too much. But let's see what happens here when I just play this part. So here we go. And again, this is with our EQ and our limiter, and now we're watching this after all of this stuff. So here it is.
We call a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them, they'll give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit.
Okay, so right here, let's look at our peaks real quick. We're at -1 on the peak, which is what we set on our limiter, which was maximum. But the true peak is actually showing -0.84 and -0.8. So it is showing us that there are actually peaks getting through this specific limiter and passing this -1. So this is why it's important that we set it at -1 when we're going to streaming, just in case things get through. We don't want those to clip the encoder on the streaming service. It causes distortion and it sounds bad. We don't want that. So set it at -1, it'll make your life better. Let me say that again. Set it to -1, it will make your life better. Just do it, just do it. Okay, now we've got our integrated right here that we're looking at. So 3.6, so again, our target was -16 LUFS. We went over that. Now granted, we didn't listen to the entire song, but in this specific end chorus, we definitely went over it by 3.6, so almost 4 loudness units. I typically go a little bit louder than this. I typically set mine for -14. -14 is a great starting point. This is kind of the average between all the streaming services. Not all streaming services use the same algorithms. So Spotify is different than iTunes, which is different than Tidal, which is different than YouTube, which is different than SoundCloud, which is different. They're all different. You're never going to get it to be perfect on every one, but you can get it close. -14 is typically where I shoot for. If I'm a little bit over, I'm usually okay. If I'm a little bit under, I'm usually okay with that as well. I just kind of want to be within 2 LUFS, 2 loudness units within that range. So the way this would typically work is we would listen to the whole thing because we need to know the entirety of the song. So if we grab this real quick, I'm going to let this play over the whole thing. And we're going to listen to it. It's about 5 minutes. So, kick back, go grab a drink, and we'll move on after this. But let's go through the whole song and see where this sits. So here it is.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident story sheriff told. Said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew Johnny didn't hunt. How Jimmy Wayne's shop burned down to the ground. It was 35 miles just south of Mactown. Called the feds and hung him out to dry. Sheriff died in a wreck when his brakes went out on his way home from his mother's house. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here. Died, he got shot at the gate. Prison guard said he was trying to escape. Daddy said he hated that it happened that way. If he'd have kept his mouth shut, he might be here today. Another little Dixie Mafia hits. There's a mob out here in the sticks. Don't cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia. It was a little Dixie
Okay, so that was the entirety of the song. As you can see, at our target of -14 LUFS, we're almost 1 full loudness unit over that, which is great. That's perfect place to be. Our peak again is set at -1, but as you can see, our true peak actually hit over that at a -0.68 and -0.7. So we're a little bit over. Again, it's why we set that threshold to -1. Okay, so this looks great. This is fantastic. This is exactly where we needed to sit on the loudness side to go out to streaming. So let's real quick, I'm gonna take Maxim off. Let's take Infinity EQ off. Let's put Ozone back on. I'm gonna reset this. Let's see, and I'll just do a short little thing. We'll do like the beginning and a chorus and just see roughly, because it pretty much got up to that LUFS level and pretty much stayed there. So let's just see what happens with the Ozone style on. Here it is.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident story Sherry told. Said it was around a double-out buck. Everybody knew Johnny didn't hunt. How Jimmy Wayne's shop burned down to the ground. It was 35 miles just south of Mactown.
Okay, that's pretty much good enough, but you can see it sits pretty much the same. And again, because we told Ozone we were going for streaming, so it set itself for its ceiling and its threshold to kind of get there. It's on true peak, so let's go back and look here. Oh, dang, and it reset. Of course it did, because it's a turd. I'm pretty sure the true peak, yeah, so looking at the levels, the true peak actually stayed there because this is a true peak. Ozone has a true peak limiter. Maxim is not a true peak limiter, so it allows some things through. So let's look at one more limiter real quick, just to kind of show you some differences and why limiters make a difference. Okay. This is the FGX. This is, again, a Slate Digital plugin. This comes with their whole pack for the $14.99 a month. Let's open this up as well. We'll kind of bring this over here for now. Okay. Now the difference between the Slate version and the others is we actually have the ability to control our processing. Right here, we have a smooth and a hard. What this means is the more we go to smooth, the way this limiter works is it actually saturates the transients. So instead of having a brick wall where the transient comes up, can no longer pass, flattens out, and comes back down, this allows the transient to actually push through and smooth off and come back down, which means it's going to go over the threshold a little bit on this guy. Now, with this guy, the ceiling can only go down to -1, which again is fine, but you know, others can go down further than that on their ceiling. But if we had this set at 100% smooth, and let me just add some dynamic perception in, we'll probably push the gain a little bit. I don't know without fully playing with this. We'll make sure the compressor's off. I'll just set it here for fully smooth. I just want to see what happens here. So let's hit play. Actually here, let's jump to a heavier part of the song. We'll kind of get into the song here a little bit. Let's see what this does.
Senator died somebody got shot at the gate.
Okay, again, so we're going smooth with this. You can see it's not crazy terrible. If I hit reset, let's go the other way, super hard. Let's see what happens here. So it's actually a little bit, funnily enough, the True Peak's allowing more through. Okay, I'm gonna do one thing. We're gonna put constant gain monitoring on. So this allows us to not hear a physical change in the volume level, but what actually happening. Let's crank up the gain and let's hit this super hard. Okay, so when it's in the hard mode, it's actually distorting pretty heavily on all the peaks. When I hit smooth, it did smooth out a little bit, but there was still distortion there. So again, this is a very specific type of limiter that uses saturation compared to just like a brick wall limiter. It does sound very transparent when used properly. It can sound really good, and like that, you can add a lot of dynamics with this. This is my go-to limiter that I use, but unless you want to purchase slate stuff, it's not gonna be one you have. Now, I believe Melda makes their own as well, which again is free, but they ask you to pay for it at some point if you can. But for now, we'll just use the EQ and Maxim, or like that we could use Ozone. So from here, what I'm gonna do, we can get rid of these for now. We're gonna bounce this one more time as it is, and then we're gonna look at it. So I'm going to select the whole track. We'll do this, and we'll say Little Dixie Mafia Hit. And I'm just going to call this the final for now. Okay. Now at this point, we have some options because we're going out for streaming. You have to be careful about where you're going. This is going to be dependent. I can't tell you off the top of my head what to choose, but not all streaming services will accept a 24-bit 48 kilohertz wave file. You'll have to double check with each streaming service. Some of them may accept 24-bit, but maybe they only accept 44.1. Some may accept 48, but maybe they only accept 16. It all depends. This will also affect how large the file is. For us, we're going to go down to 44.1 and we're going to go 16-bit for now. This is CD quality. It's good enough for CD. It's good enough for this for now. Let's hit bounce. It'll process, and then we'll take a look at it. Here we go. Ta-da! All right, let's just grab that. And we do have to convert this because we did convert it to 44.1, but that's okay. I'll just hit done real quick. Bring it back in. Making this process. Boom, new track. Okay, let's take a look at the two. We'll go extreme on this one. We'll go extreme on this one. All right, we'll scale these down. All right, so now, immediately, we can see this one definitely louder. We can also see these peaks here are gone. They don't jump out as much. We still have some good space here, but super fat through here. Again, we can see a lot of the drums, a lot of transients. Again, our crest factor is the difference between the super dark, thick area and our transients up here, but it looks pretty good. Again, nice fat mix, very full. Now it's not brick walled. If it were brick walled, this would just be one giant like solid track, and that's not what we want unless maybe we're going for a super crazy effect with like an EDM dance tune or something like that. We want dynamics because without dynamics, that's going to make our LUFS number be a lot higher, which means all the streaming services are going to turn it down. And then if it gets turned down, it's going to be quieter amongst other mixes that are leveled out properly. So the days are gone of crushing mixes and making them sound super fat because all streaming services are turning those mixes down. You want to have dynamics. You want to have some differences in there because your mix will translate really well because streaming services are flattening out. Now, granted, not everybody puts like that because it is a feature in most streaming services to level that out. Not everyone does that, but they did that to make music sound similar. So if you're going from a piece by Bach to a Metallica rock song, the volume level is perceivably the same between the two. That's why they did this and put this into place, and also to protect your hearing, because now if things are leveled out, you don't have one song that's quiet that you've turned up and then the next song that comes on is just crazy loud and you're like, ah crap, you gotta turn it down. So this allows us to have dynamics and stuff. So the website that we love to go to is called loudnesspenalty.com, which I actually don't have it in here. So loudnesspenalty.com. Okay. These guys do make a plugin that you can use. However, this right here is online. We use this consistently. Again, loudnesspenalty.com. So what this does, you would drop an audio file in here. It will analyze it and will tell you and show you what it would look like on whatever streaming service you want. So we're going to select a file and we bounce that to our desktop. It's our Little Dixie Mafia hit Final Wave. We'll choose that. It will process. It might take a minute because we got a lot of stuff going on. Plus it was a decently large file. Uploading. Again, might take a minute because we're also streaming out. So there's a lot of information going out on our internet at the moment. And ta-da, okay. So, Little Dixie Mafia hit, this is what it's showing us here. So it's saying right now on YouTube, if we were to take this file straight to YouTube, it would turn it down by 0.8 dB. That's not bad. Spotify would turn it down by 1.7, so almost 2 dB on Spotify. Tidal, again, 0.8, so almost a dB. iTunes, and this is a rough estimate, but iTunes, -2, Amazon Music, 0.08, Pandora, -1.3, Deezer, -1.8. So again, we're just in that zone. We're right there. So if you see this, like a -1, maybe -2, or +1, +2, that's kind of where you want to be with music going to a streaming service. If this were to say -5, -8, something like that, your mix is way too loud. It's going to turn them down. Now the problem with this is when these streaming services turn these down, they don't care how they do it. So typically they strap another limiter on top of it, which can distort your audio, and they pull it down. They don't just like turn the gain down. They use a limiter to bring the entire thing down and quiet it down, which adds more compression. It can add distortion, artifacts to your song that you may not want. Again, this is barely hitting the peaks of everything, so not a lot. This is great. This is where we want to be. Vice versa, if this were to say like +8, +10, your mix is too quiet. And the same thing can happen is they're going to compress your file, compress your audio, and it may not sound the way you thought it did when you bounced it. So this is why we worry about LUFS when we're mastering, is right here. Again, this website is great. You can always drop your mix in. You can even listen to it. So if we were to play these, if I were to click on each one and hit play, we could hear exactly what it would sound like going through those. So great tool to use. Again, loudnesspenalty.com. Grab it, bookmark it. This is free. Their plugin is not free, but if you would rather have the plugin version, you can always go purchase it. But we use this. It works great. This was made by or in conjunction with a mastering engineer in the UK by the name of Ian Shepherd. Great mastering engineer, great YouTube channel, a lot of information about mastering. If this is something you want to get into, mastering audio and really learn a lot, he's a great person to use for information. So real quick, actually, just because we can, let me grab that other file. This one might take longer. All right, I'll let that one do its thing while we talk over the rest of this. So again, slight EQ moves, not a lot. All we did was we cut some low end on the sides, boosted 1 dB of low end in the mids, and boosted some top end. Mike, loudnesspenalty.com. We used a limiter to bring it down. So there's our threshold and our ceiling. So that all was there. And then from there, we just bounced out. Now, again, there's a lot more to mastering than this. There's a lot of mid-side processing, a lot of effects that we can use to make mixes sound more depth, more width, all of these things. These are advanced techniques that if you have questions or you want to learn more on, subscribe to our channel. Make sure to follow us, all that fun stuff. Again, as we go further, we'll get more into that kind of stuff. As it is right now with COVID going on, we don't think we'll be able to do the summer courses that we wanted to do. So instead, we'll most likely be doing a lot of that stuff on YouTube as we can. So that's where you'll find a lot of our information. If you have any other questions, you guys can always feel free to email us and ask. Again, keep on doing what you're doing with everything that we have. The YouTube guy, Ian Shepherd. Yeah, it's his name, Ian Shepherd. I don't remember the name of his exact channel, but you can look him up. But yeah, super great guy. You guys have complete access to the Google Drive. We will continue uploading mixes as we do them and as we get permission from artists so that you guys can continue to build a portfolio. We are almost finished with the rest of our videos for CSM. So we will have a bunch of CSM mixing videos, acoustic, drums, basically everything that we did here together. We're going to post a video about it onto Google Drive. So you'll have access to all of those as well as all of these YouTube videos and then anything else we come out with on YouTube going more in depth with things. Yeah. So, all right, let's just jump back and see if this did it. Okay, boom. Look at this. So this was the other track. This was the track that we brought in from our mix, not our mastered track. You see +5 here, +2 here, +5, 4. You see some of these services do not turn them up. What does that mean? That means your mix is going to be quieter than everybody else's. Not good. On these streaming services, they'll turn them up for you, but the rest of them will not. So it's always better to be a little bit over than under. So just heads up on that one. Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So, yeah, thank you guys so much. For everything. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys learned what you wanted to learn. I hope you guys took a lot of information away from here. I hope there's some inspiration to keep working, to keep getting better at all of this stuff. Again, we covered the basics. We barely brushed the surface. I've been doing this for a decade. I still learn every day. That's what I spend my life doing. So every day I'm trying to learn new tricks, new tips. I'll never stop. If there's any questions you guys ever have about anything at any time, you guys can always reach out to us. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this course. Really appreciate it, because this is what I wanted to do. I always wanted to teach, so I'm hoping that you guys got to take away a lot from this. Anyway, there's my sappy little speech for you guys. We will be sending out your certificates. Yes, you guys do get certificates saying that you basically graduated from Central Oregon Recordings Mixing Experience. So if we don't have your physical address, we might be emailing you to get it from you. But we have some nice certificates that you can hang up and say that you have now gone through our course. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I hope everyone is still staying safe and gets through COVID, all this fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I will catch you guys next time. Unless there's any other questions, I'll pause and wait here. If you guys have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or if you can't think of them now or would rather just email them, you can do that too. So yeah. That's pretty much all I got. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. We might end up, side note, we might end up doing stuff for live if and when we get back to some kind of normalcy of being able to do live music again. We might be doing some live courses. So just, yeah, throw that out there. Oh, the lag. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk soon at some point. So thank you guys so much. We'll see ya.